Во тема на денот, како што најавив, разговарам со Петер Бајер, пратеник на CDU во германскиот Бундестаг. Welcome to the Sitel newscast.
Thanks for having me.
You're coming to Macedonia in a pre-election period. What are your expectations from the election process in our country?
Yeah, first of all, it's good to be here so shortly before both elections, the presidential elections and the parliamentary elections. Gives me a lot of insights with in my meetings with the folks that I'm meeting and talking about this current situation. And, you know, my expectations is that it's going to be a fair election process, the campaigns with respect and according to rules and regulations that you have in this country. And as far as I see this, you know, apart from some campaign rhetoric, this is expected in every campaign. I think it's going quite fine.
Your sister party, VMRO-DPMNE, CDU's sister party, is being criticized as a blockator of the EU integration process because of the lack of support for constitutional amendments, which should be done in order to proceed with the EU integration and the negotiation process. How do you view this matter?
Yeah, one thing that I would like to start off with is that the EU enlargement process and the EU accession process of this very country of North Macedonia is very important, should be paramount. Not only for me as a foreigner in this country, as a German, but for your country and also for the whole European Union. I think North Macedonia should belong to the European Union. So VMRO-DPMNE has been criticized, as you mentioned rightly, but you know, if you look to the past, I have never witnessed any top representative of this party who said something publicly as a statement against European Union. On the contrary, from every talks that I'm having over the past years, I have witnessed a lot of pro-European statements. I know for sure they also want an amendment to the Constitution, but they have their arguments and reasons why they, you know, said not in this, not now. And with regard to the procedure of the constitutional amendments, and also with regard to, you know, the behavior, the acting of Bulgaria and some of the top representatives, I have a lot of understanding why VMRO-DPMNE acted like it acted, and they get, by the way, a lot of support. The vast majority of Macedonians are, you know, sees it the same way. So that's also, as far as I see, that they get a lot of support in these current campaign and for the upcoming elections. So very much pro-European. They have their arguments on their side, and after the elections, if they win, if they build a government or any other government in North Macedonia, certainly will have to do with this issue. And my expectation is from the next government of North Macedonia is being pro-European, make that constitutional amendment, not next year, but look into that very issue before this year is over.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the international community also understands these arguments that VMRO-DPMNE has? You know, I mean, it does not come as a surprise now. For quite some while, representatives of this party have traveled through the European Union and also talked with the Americans, also always play a role when it comes to this region of the world. But we have had a lot of meetings with them, both in Brussels and in Berlin and elsewhere, and they explained their narrative, their arguments, and you know, the line of reasoning I and others could very much understand. So yes, I think yes. Mm-hmm. But again, pro-European, I think where they need to increase their efforts is a little bit with regard to establishing credibility when it comes to being, you know, behind the constitutional amendments immediately after they have formed a new government. You're aware that here in Macedonia they are referred to as a pro-Russian political party by the government, who is claiming that is the pro-European or the pro-American front in Macedonia. Do you think that it's reasonable to say that there are two blocs in Macedonia? The fact is that no serious political party in this country is against the European Union and the integration.
Yeah, you know, looking into the various campaign and party programs, I don't think there's anyone like outright being pro-Russian. So that's right. Most of them or all of them claim to be like pro-European, which is a good thing. If you look behind, of course, I don't know. I can't see behind everything, but I think it's fair to say that I cannot detect really a pro-Russian bloc, political bloc, or political party bloc in this country. I think we have to be a little bit careful not to overrate Russian influence in this country. So I don't have really serious concerns in this regard.
As a member of the German Parliament, of the German Bundestag, you supported the protocol for this country's membership in NATO. That was 5 years ago. But in your speech in front of your colleagues, you strongly criticized the reform process, and you said that emphasis should be put on rule of law, fight against corruption, more quality reforms in the country. How do you evaluate the situation today, 5 years later?
I can't remember my speech of 5 years ago, but thanks for reminding me.
I looked it up.
And I trust that everything is right. First of all, I would like to start with NATO membership. It's a good thing. I mean, we strongly supported that, and I welcome North Macedonia as a NATO member country. They are doing a tremendous job. It's good to have them in. So with regard to reforms, it's still on the table, although we have to acknowledge also in the EU progress reports that some progress has been made, but on some of the things in the so-called cluster one, the fundamentals, fight against corruption, which is number one, I would say, reform of the judiciary, and also rule of law. All these three are labeled with still top priority when it comes to investing more in time, personnel, and efforts in reforms. So this is still on the table. It's not a thing that is already over. So 5 years ago and now, yes, there has been progress. We have to acknowledge that. But also it's not over. It's a progress, it's a process which still have to be done much, much more.
Yeah. How do you evaluate the effects of the Berlin process, which started 10 years ago, from today's perspective?
Yeah, happy anniversary, 10 years of Berlin process initiated by back then German Chancellor Angela Merkel, by the way, from my party, CDU. Yes. It was a good initiative. In the last, I think, like 2 years or so, I was from time to time wondering, is it still alive? I mean, seeing that there were like summits and meetings both in the region and also in Berlin. The next one, the 10th one, will be back in Berlin again later this year. So this is a good thing. Sometimes I'm wondering, where are the new or fresh ideas? What are the outcomes? But hey, look, I mean, I still believe in the Berlin process. It's about bringing the governments and the countries, not only the government, the countries and their representatives together, communicating, and if something good comes out of it, if they interact by themselves more intensely without that somebody else from outside has to push them, it's a good thing. And let me add to that, seeing that the Berlin process was originated and still is a thing amongst governments, purely intergovernmental, I would also like to see more interaction between the parliaments of the region. So parliamentarians need to step up and need to see that they are the representative, the directly elected representatives of the respective folks, citizens in their countries. So that is an idea that I would like to bring to the table as well.
What is Germany's role today in the region, and do you think that all of these countries that were part of the Berlin process have a certain future in the European Union as members?
So I would thank you for that question. I would start with answering the latter part of the question. A clear yes. Clear perspective of all the countries of the region, and if we talk about the region, we're talking about the 6 so-called Western Balkans country, which includes North Macedonia. We're going back to 2003, the promise and perspective of Thessaloniki. Sometimes I hate to repeat this because it's like a long time ago, and sometimes I have my doubts as well. Are we doing enough as European Union, as Brussels, as Berlin, as Paris, and so on, to actually live up to that promise that we made in 2003. But that clear perspective is still unchanged on the table. Over the time there has been a development with regard to new methodologies and everything, but the perspective is there. I would never say a clear date. There's a lot of homework in this accession process of the respective candidates and the countries of the 6 Western Balkan countries. It needs to be done, needs to be implemented. We talked about some of the reforms of North Macedonia, which has been looked into before, but which is still on the table to be done. Germany's role.
Kosovo-Serbia issue probably is going to be very important for the
Which one?
Kosovo-Serbia
Kosovo-Serbia is a special thing because it's not only the normal accession process, but they have that special issue with the normalization process amongst each other, which is really sometimes a little bit frustrating, because sometimes you think, it goes 2 steps forward and then 1 back, or 1 back and 2 forward and 2 back. But we have to look into that because the countries are surrounded by EU member countries, and they're in the heart of the existing European Union. They naturally belong to the European Union. So that was the second part of the question. The first one, which was referring to the role of Germany in the Berlin process, in the region, the countries. As far as I see it, Germany is still playing a role as giving a lot of financial contribution through Brussels, but also bilaterally, directly. So this is something that we are quite proud of, and we should not, decrease. And also with regard, we talked a little bit about the Berlin process. I'm happy that the incumbent German government is also still believing somehow in the Berlin process. But as I mentioned earlier, Germany should step up, should come up with some fresh ideas, not alone. I'm quite happy to see that this so-called Weimar Triangle, Berlin, Paris, and Warsaw, it's not a part of the Berlin process, but it's a very strong and important axis within the European Union. And my expectation is that we see a lot of new, fresh ideas, new power within the European Union. Because, let's face it, the European Union as it stands now is not as strong with regard to its belief in itself, in its own strength, as it, I think, was like 10 years ago when the Berlin process was created.
Yes. With the crisis in the Middle East and the recent developments between Iran and Israel, how serious do you think the consequences could get for Europe and for this region?
I strongly condemn what Iran has done to Israel, the massive attacks with hundreds of drones and missiles and rockets. It's the Mullah regime in Tehran has ridiculed itself, celebrating a victory, whereas 99% of the drones and missiles have been, shot off the sky, which is a big success for Israel. I am concerned that in the near Middle East region that something now is going on with regard to the change of the quality. But for the very first time, Iran directly attacked Israel, not through its usual proxies like the Houthis or the Hezbollah, for example. So there's a change in quality. De-escalation is, needs to be done, and I'm quite happy that both U.S. President Joe Biden, but also the German government and others have reached, and together with the Qataris and the Saudis, on Tehran and on Tel Aviv, that they, somehow achieved that they de-escalated the situation, that the foreign minister of Iran said, this was it, more or less. And we still have no clear decision from Tel Aviv, but the war cabinet has been in session, and as far as I understand that they understand the situation, that there does not need to be a strong, answer, some kind of retaliation. Benjamin Netanyahu is a very smart guy. He also has to be tough. Israel has all right legitimacy to fight back. And like 2 days ago, I set up a tweeted on X, said this needs to have the Iranian attack needs to have an adequate answer, which would, for me, include a tough answer, and Israel would have a legitimate, right to do so, to defend itself. But it's also prudent to use, sober-mindedness at this very point in time. Nobody could be interested in an escalation of the situation, but because that would mean not only for the near Middle East, but also for our role, which would certainly involve more involvement, financially, militarily, would have a negative effect also on the security and stability in Europe and in the Western world, with terrorist attacks also in our countries, and nobody wants that.
Yes. Mr. Baier, thank you very much for being with us this evening.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.